Could Sukuna's fire arrow actually be Yuji's curse technique, or Sukuna's twin's curse technique if he is indeed a twin? Let's talk about it. So I've seen this question, or at least some variant of it, a lot, and I recently got asked this by both Greasy Penguin and Good Buddy Corn. Feel free to pause and read their entire questions if you'd like, but it boils down to this idea: if the fire arrow or the black box could be someone else's technique, be it Yuji's, be it the twins, or be it even if Yuji is Sukuna's twin, right? So I don't think this is the case, and I'm going to tackle this basically from two separate directions. So let's first look at this from a Yuji point of view, and let's look at this in a vacuum, okay? So we're going to assume Yuji isn't Sukuna's twin. Well, we still know he doesn't have the flame arrow as a curse technique because we know he doesn't have a curse technique, period. And we know this because Gojo tells us his six eyes are capable of determining that information just by looking at somebody. Gojo tells us that a sorcerer's strength is 80% talent. You gotta be born with it. So he's letting Yuji down here, saying like, you know what, you're not gonna get the Rasengan or the Kamehameha because you don't have a curse technique. So the only way around this would be if Gojo was lying here, and there's really no reason for him to lie about this. So Yuji doesn't have a curse technique. The flame arrow or the black box can't be his. Now, if we want to look at it from this hypothetical twin scenario where Sukuna is indeed a twin and it's not Yuji, could that theoretical twin have the flame arrow or the black box technique? And in my opinion, no, because of what we learned about Maki and Mai. We are told that the universe treats these types of twins as one individual. This is why Maki didn't have a curse technique. It's because Mai already had the curse technique. And if they're one person, they wouldn't have two separate curse techniques. So, if Sukuna is a twin, his twin theoretically wouldn't have a curse technique at all. They would be more akin to Maki or Yuji, which is one of the reasons, I think this twin theory holds some water. But if you're more interested in that, I've got a couple of videos talking about it, so check those out. And while we're on the subject, this whole twin situation is one of the reasons I theorize for why Sukuna has 4 arms and 2 mouths, because he was a conjoined twin, right? Well, I had Montana over in the Discord hit me up with another possibility that could go hand in hand with the twins or could explain it otherwise. And he says that perhaps Sukuna made some sort of binding vow that resulted in this deformed form, because he thinks that both Sukuna and Yuji are kind of paralleled in the fact that they will do anything to accomplish their goals. Sukuna kind of speaks to this when comparing the strength of his ideals. So I do think this is possible. I think the form could be a result of some sort of binding vow. Now, the specifications of that vow, I don't really know what they would be. I don't know what Sukuna would have had to have given up to have gained those benefits, but maybe it could be connected to the twin situation in some form. All right, y'all, just a little warning. From here on out, we are going to enter spoiler territory. I'm going to tackle a few more questions about Sukuna, but they deal with the current status of the manga. So for my anime onlys, we'll see you in the next one. All right, so next up, we've got this question from Esoteric Espinoza about Sukuna's Black Flash against Maki. Now, feel free to pause and read the whole thing if you'd like, but your question has been somewhat answered by the manga itself, because since he asked this question, chapter 255 has come out, and we've seen Sukuna now hit a second Black Flash, and the narrator has even spoken to the effect of, we saw what happened when Gojo hit the Black Flash, so what's about to happen with Sukuna? So yes, totally. Sukuna is getting benefits from this. We know that when you hit a Black Flash, you're in the zone, and now that he's hit 2, he is absolutely in the zone, operating at 120% of your potential and potentially regaining lost output, both in cursed energy in general, but obviously RCT as well. So yeah, I think Sukuna is definitely on the rise, on the come up, and it's very scary, right? In terms of why I think it's being kept quiet, I don't think it is. And again, now that chapter 255 is out, it's easier to say that, but I just don't think the relevant benefits of it have come to fruition yet. But now that he has hit the second one, I think Sukuna is about to get real scary. And the final part of your question I want to address is this one right here, where you say, is it not practically impossible for any of our protagonists to spar with him at all now? Because they were already struggling against a severely weakened Sukuna, right? If he's hitting Black Flashes, he's in the zone, he's regaining output, what hope do they have? Anyway, speaking of what can the cast do against Sukuna, we've got this question from Belted, which asks, could Sukuna in his Heian era form, full power, fully healed, and bloodlusted, take on everyone not named Gojo at once if there's no domain expansions for anybody? And just to be clear here, we're not talking about the current cast versus a full power Sukuna. We're talking about every character who's ever been introduced versus Sukuna at once. So here's what I'll say. If you're going to take away his domain expansion, his meaning Sukuna's, then I think there is some critical mass number of people that are going to just be able to ultimately overwhelm him, given some, unique combinations of all of the abilities on the table. Because again, we're talking Yuki's there, Yorozu's there, Kashimo, like everyone. I think they can take him out. But if you give him his domain expansion, I think he wins that matchup because he just opens the domain and obliterates everybody, or at least the majority of them, and then he can go hunt down the rest, right? Because I don't think anyone's domain, not named Gojo, is going to be equal to his in refinement and be able to cancel it out, right? So no domains, I think they can get the job done probably. They're going to sustain heavy casualties, but I think they can do it. But with domains, I think Sukuna would win, honestly. And I actually had another question from Belted where he wanted to know if I think Sukuna would care if Uruume passed away. And honestly, no, but it depends on what you mean by care. We know that Sukuna keeps Uruume around because he finds them useful, especially because they are a great chef, apparently. So I feel like he would probably be agitated by the fact that he lost that benefit to himself, like he lost access to this really well-cooked food, but I don't think he would be sad insofar as that like he lost a friend or anything. So I don't think he would care in that regard. And finally, all to round out this video, I've got a few miscellaneous questions, so we're going to tackle those real quick. And first up, we've got these from Ospe, who wants to know if I think Saitama would be affected by Unlimited Void or Infinity. And yeah, I mean, in some kind of like cross-verse equalization scenario, I do think Saitama would have to figure out a way past Infinity. Now, could he figure out a way? Probably, just given the way, One Punch Man works, that he is that strong. But he doesn't really seem to have too many crazy hacks. He's just literally scales to match his opponent and surpass them, right? But that doesn't really solve the infinity problem. But here's what I'll say. I think Saitama could ultimately beat Gojo, in some roundabout ways where he maybe wouldn't even have to worry about infinity. Like, again, same with the Goku argument. He could just destroy the planet and eventually Gojo's gonna, suffocate, right? But that aside, I do think if Gojo managed to capture him in the domain expansion, Saitama's gonna be affected by it. Like, he's got a human brain like everybody else, so that would be the win con for Gojo, in my opinion. Now, the next question is, would the inverted spear of heaven immediately remove the shadow dogs that Sukuna uses against Yorozu? So this is interesting, and I actually put out a video talking about the Inverted Spear of Heaven versus Maharaga. So if you haven't watched that, watch that for more kind of a nuanced discussion on this. But I think it's tough to say. I do think in that very specific situation, though, the Inverted Spear would probably have a better chance of dealing with them because they are still like part of the shadows, which is more like in tune with the curse technique, I would say, as opposed to like a fully manifested Shikigami. For example, if you just stabbed the normal fully manifested dog with the Inverted Spear of Heaven, I think you would injure it, surely, but I don't think it would poof away. The shadows might just poof away. And to your final question of do I think JJK would be better if it took more of a traditional shonen approach? And no, I think that's one of the things that makes JJK great, the way it kind of subverts the expectation and does things with its own spin. So, let's let Gege cook and see what happens. Next up, we've got this question from Silika, who wants to know if Jacob's Ladder would work on Maharaga. And I personally think Jacob's Ladder would work a lot better and a lot more effectively than the Inverted Spear of Heaven, because it is just like the pure form of that curse technique, negating and nullifying. The question is, how long or how much exposure would you need before you could take out Maharaga? Because I don't think it would be instant, especially from what we've seen against Jacob's Ladder used against Sukuna recently. But I do think it could ultimately get the job done if you were able to maintain it long enough on Maharaga. And then finally, we've got this question from Zhao, who wants to know who I think wins between Yuki and Yorozu. And I would love to see this fight. I think it would be incredible. But if you made me pick, I'm going to have to go with Yuki, just because I think her curse technique is stronger and has more potential. Now, obviously, Yorozu is no slouch. That perfect spear is nothing to be messed with, right? But I honestly think if anyone, Yuki may be the most equipped to deal with the perfect spear, or at least maybe it wouldn't even get to that point, right? And if we're going to go to a hypothetical what-if maximum scenario, then the black hole can deal with the perfect spear. Yeah, Yuki might go out, but she's at least taking Yorozu with her. So ultimately, I'm going to go Yuki.